Hey guys, welcome back to Past Midnight. I'm so excited to introduce the new channel name. It feels like a perfect fit for all the creepy and dark and quirky stories that we talk about on here. If you're new, hi, I'm Jennifer. It's been a weird couple days. Like TikTok was banned. I don't even know if it was a full 24 hours, and then it was back. And then along with that, CapCut was banned, which is what I use to edit my videos. And then I recorded some and I lost the audio on them. And then I had an existential crisis and dyed my hair. So today's story is equal parts bizarre, as it is grisly, and a little soap operatic, pun intended. We're talking about Leonarda Cianciulli. I think I'm pronouncing that right. The soap maker of Correggio. This one's a wild ride that involves fortune telling, human soap, and tea cakes. It's a weird combination, but you'll see at the end. So grab a blanket, turn down the lights, because I'm taking you back to Correggio, Italy in the year 1939. Leonarda Cianciulli was born on April 14th, 1894 in a small town called Montella in southern Italy. Her early life, not great, and I feel like that's how majority of these stories start. In fact, it was actually really bad. According to Leonarda in her memoir, her mother Amelia was forced to marry the man who raped her. Amelia supposedly came from a good family with kind of a high status, so I'm kind of surprised how that worked out or how that was even allowed to happen. But it wasn't the best start to a life, and Amelia's bitterness and resentment toward her situation seemed to bleed into her relationship with her daughter, Leonarda, who described her childhood as abusive and loveless. I mean, Amelia was miserable, and I guess because she hated herself so much, she constantly criticized Leonarda for every little thing that she did. And trigger warning for suicide ideation, but when Leonarda was young, she tried to end her life not once, but twice. The first time she tried to end her life with a rope, she was stopped, but by her own accounts, her mother said, or she recalled her mother saying that she was sad that she didn't succeed. So that just shows you what kind of a shitty person her mom was, and in the way she raised her daughter. And the second time, she swallowed stays from her mom's corset, and I had to look it up, but it's like the hard part that acts as the support in corsets, along with shards of glass. And remarkably, nothing happened. Her father, the abuser, he was drunk and he was never really in the picture. One time, Amelia and the daughter, Leonarda, would go out looking for him in the town, only to find him passed out in an alleyway, obviously drunk. They brought him home and tossed him into a room where he would later die. So that's the background gist of it. Fast forward to 1917, Leonarda is now a young woman, and she decides to marry a man named Raphael Pansardi, who worked as a registry office clerk. The mom's remarried at this point, and this is where the drama really starts because her family, they're not happy. Her mother wanted her to marry someone wealthier, or someone who was more respectable, likely someone who could elevate their family's financial situation. And Leonarda's decision to move forward with the wedding caused a massive rift in their relationship. Although I don't know if there was much of a relationship to begin with, but rumor has it her mother actually cursed her on the day before her wedding. And it was like the full-on thing, the kind you see in movies, like curse you and your children and your children's children kind of drama. Now, whether you believe in curses or not, things do take a darker turn for Leonarda after this. And the mom said that this was for ruining her life a second time. And now that we know that she came from a shitty family, her husband was really the only person in her life to ever show her immense and unconditional love. He was actually a good guy, and their love was apparent. But the trauma that she obviously had to deal with when she was younger didn't just magically go away, and she couldn't be mean to her nice husband, so she directed all that sadness and hate inwards. She was incredibly hard on herself, even in her adult years. So she dealt with things like anxiety, depression. She also suffered from seizures, And she believed that all of this turmoil was because of the curse that her mother put on her. So it gets to a point where she genuinely starts to believe that, and she turns to the Romanis for palm reading. And she found them in like a fair or something, but instead of reassuring her, they tell her, quote unquote, "In your right hand, I see prison, in your left, a criminal asylum." Where is this palm reader? Because I might want to get mine read. Fast forward, she and her husband settle in this little town called Loria from 1912 to 1927. But let me tell you, Leonarda already had a reputation, and not the good kind. People in Loria, Montella, and Lacedonia all knew her as, well, kind of a troublemaker. She was impulsive, rebellious, and she was always like boasting about herself. And rumor has it, not exactly the most honest person either. She wasn't just the quirky neighbor. She had a criminal record. So here's a tea. In 1912, at just 18 years old, she was convicted of theft. Fast forward to 1919, she's out here threatening someone with a dagger in Montella. And in 1927, she gets hit with a fraud conviction in Loria. And it wasn't just like a petty crime. No, she swindled an old lady out of a ton of money and valuables. The girl was bold. For a depressed girl, I mean, she was getting things done. She was on the move. And now for that last one, she does actually serve 10 months and 15 days in prison. Her lawyer did try like the she's insane card, but they weren't buying it. So her husband's still working as an office clerk, and because of her reputation, I don't think like his career was really going anywhere or like thriving. They all knew who he was married to, and they kind of looked down on him for that. At this point, they're in Lariano, and their home would eventually be destroyed by the Irpinia earthquake in 1930. So they picked up again and finally moved to Correggio, where Leonarda decided to take advantage and reinvent herself. Her husband continued working as a clerk at the registry office, and he only made a little, couldn't really support the family. And also, let's just say he had a thing for wine. Not exactly the recipe for financial success. But Leonarda, as we know, wasn't just the type to sit around. No, she wanted to turn things around for her family. So using the compensation money that they received from the earthquake, she goes on to open up a small shop selling clothing and furniture. Oh, and on the side, she was a palm reader. I guess she was inspired by the Romany lady. After she opened up this small shop, she actually became well liked by the community. People said she was charming, kind, and a fortune teller, which was their favorite part, because she was out here reading palms, telling fortunes, and honestly, she was good at it. People trusted her, confided in her, and eventually even saw her as a maternal figure for the town. But let's backtrack a little bit, because there is an important detail that we haven't covered yet. Leonarda had 17 pregnancies. Yeah, 17. I'm afraid to even have one. But unfortunately, only 4 would survive. She lost 3 in miscarriages, and the other 10 died in their youth. That constant heartbreak and grief led her to be very protective of the children that she did had. Understandable. But once again, she believed that this was all due to the curse that her mother put on her, and that would lead her to do unthinkable things. So now the year is 1939, and Italy is gearing up for World War II. It's always so hard saying that for some reason. It's like a tongue twister for me. World War II. There we go. And Leonarda's son, Giuseppe, who's 21 at the time, gets drafted to the military. And this was her favorite child, so Leonarda was devastated. In her mind, losing Giuseppe would be the ultimate proof that the curse was real. So she comes up with a brilliant plan, and she decides that the only way to protect her son is through human sacrifice. Because, you know, that's the only logical solution, right? She thought the blood of others could protect her family. In her mind, the sacrifices would counteract the bad luck and ill fortune that seemed to follow her everywhere she went. Now, where she got this idea, I'm not really sure. So let's get into the juicy stuff. Her first victim was a woman named Faustina Seti. Faustina was a middle-aged spinster, which That's what they called older ladies who weren't married. And she came to Leonarda for help in finding a husband. Leonarda, being the fortune teller that she was, well, and actually they were kind of friends. Like, Faustina would support her small business. She would come over, they would gossip and drink tea together. Told Faustina that she had found her the perfect man. The only catch was that he lived far away. To be convincing, she showed her some fake pictures and told her how much he wants to meet her, just getting her really amped up and excited. Leonarda takes advantage of her loneliness. So Faustina was instructed to write letters to her friends and family, telling them that she was going to leave town to marry this random man. Now, on the day of her departure, Faustina goes to Leonarda's house to have a farewell drink. Like I told you, they were kind of friends, which makes this even more messed up. Unbeknownst to Faustina, Leonarda spikes her drink. Like, she was going to get her man. She was excited. They were celebrating. Once Faustina was loopy, Leonarda goes into one of the back rooms and comes out with an axe. She goes on to later tell the authorities that her plan was to kill her swiftly with one blow to the head, but instead she comes down hard on her shoulder. Faustina, obviously shocked, she's screaming in pain, and Leonarda just keeps whacking her until she's dead. Then she drags Faustina's body into a closet and dismembers it into 9 parts. And she made it a point to collect the blood separately. But wait, it gets worse. Leonarda boils Faustina's body in a large pot, turning her flesh into soap and her blood into tea cakes. See, now it's all tying together. Leonarda later claimed that she served these tea cakes to her neighbors and even ate them herself. I know, it's disgusting. And yet, in her crazy ass mind, she seemed to think that this was normal. She even wrote about it in her memoir, describing the whole process in chilling detail. She said in her memoir, and I quote, "I threw the pieces into a pot, added 7 kilos of caustic soda, which I had bought to make soap, and stirred the mixture until the pieces dissolved into a thick, dark mush. I poured it into several buckets and emptied them into a nearby septic tank. As for the blood, I waited until it had coagulated, dried it in the oven, ground it, and mixed it with flour, sugar, chocolate, milk, and eggs, as well as a bit of margarine. Kneading all the ingredients together, I made lots of crunchy tea cakes and served them to the ladies who came to visit, though Giuseppe and I also ate them." Oh, and she also received Seti's life savings as a payment for her service. But Leonarda wasn't done. I don't know, maybe she thought one life wasn't enough to ensure the safety of her son. So her second victim is Francesca Soavi, who was a school teacher who once again sought out Leonarda's guidance. Leonarda told her about this great job that would pay a ton of money, but once again, it was far away or out of town. So same thing here, Francesca has to write these letters to her family and friends, telling them that she's going for this new opportunity. Then Leonarda kills her and repeats the whole process again. But she does make it a point to mention that this time she swung with more confidence, finishing it quicker than the first. More soap, more tea cakes, it's horrifying. Her third and final victim was Virginia Cacioppo. I looked it up on YouTube and I think that's how you say it. I'm sorry if any Italian people are watching this. A former opera singer who fell on hard times. And there weren't many notable people in the town to begin with, so she believed that if any life was good enough to, keep Giuseppe safe, this was the one. Which people at this point think that might have been a scapegoat. I mean, I get it, because you've already taken 2 lives, so why do you need to keep going? But Virginia was lured to Leonarda's home with the promise of a job in Florence. But just like the others, she would meet her brutal end. After the special drink, Virginia became immobile. Leonarda lays her on the ground and steals all of her expensive jewelry off her body and dismembers her. Interestingly, Leonarda claimed that Virginia made the best soap. She said, quote, Her flesh was fat and white. When it had melted, I added a bottle of cologne, and after a long time on the boil, I was able to make the most acceptable creamy soap. I gave bars to neighbors and acquaintances. The cakes too were better. That woman was really sweet. And from Cacioppo, Leonarda receives money, assorted jewels, and even public bonds. And then she goes on to sell her clothing and shoes. The casualness of it all is actually wild. Oh, and to make matters even worse, Giuseppe comes home one day and she's like, wash yourself with this soap. It's Virginia. And he's like, no, what the hell? I'm not gonna wash myself with this random soap. So she takes him into the shower, this is a grown man, and forcibly washes him with the soap, and then makes him eat the tea cakes after. So how did she get caught? Well, Virginia's sister became a little suspicious when she hadn't heard from Virginia in some time. She was last seen entering Leonarda's home. That's why I'm like, in these small towns, I feel like everyone sees everything. She goes on to report her concerns to the police, who do launch an investigation. Now, when they were going around asking the people in town, like, have you seen this lady Virginia? Or have you seen anything suspicious? And people are like, actually, yes, we have. There was a buzzing rumor that 2 ladies had also gone missing, and they were all last seen entering Leonarda's home. So the police look into this, and they notice a common theme, that all of the families of the victims received these letters. Well, they go on to inspect these letters and see that they were all sent from Giuseppe, Leonarda's son. If anything is true, we know that she loved her kids, because after finding this out, she goes on to confess. She didn't want that suspicion falling on her son. She goes on to be arrested in 1940 and is sentenced to 30 years in prison and 3 years in the criminal asylum. And because of the World War II things that were going on, she didn't even go before court until like a good 6 years. So I guess she did more time collectively. Oh, and to top things off, after she gets arrested, people are just so disgusted with her behavior that everyone shuns her. Like her husband, he had enough. And even Giuseppe, her son. She died of a cerebral hemorrhage in 1970, but her story goes on to be one of the most bizarre and horrifying in true crime history. Fun fact, several items related to the case, including the pot that she used to boil the victims in, are on display at the Criminology Museum in Rome. There was also like a play titled Magic in Mama's Kitchen that was based on her story, and it was later premiered on Broadway in 1983. So what do we make of all of this? Was Leonarda driven by madness, grief, or some twisted sense of love for her children? Or was it the curse? Maybe it was all of the above. Whatever the case, her story is a grim reminder of how far some people will go to protect the ones they love. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments, and as always, thanks for hanging out with me. If you liked this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and share it with your friends, please. Until next time, stay safe. Bye, guys.